Future Trends is brought to you by the Institute for Economics and Peace.
Welcome to the latest edition of Future Trends, the weekly briefing on the changing face of global politics, economics, development, social and conflict. Here's this week's headline stories. Portugal's government collapses again. US says it will keep attacking Yemen's Houthis until shipping attacks end. Man with heart failure has total artificial heart implant. Greenland's opposition in surprise victory. Syria's temporary constitution for 5-year transition. US and Israel look to Africa for moving Palestinians from Gaza. Here's the latest stories in politics. Greenland's opposition in surprise victory. The win by Greenland's centre-right Democratic Party came in a vote dominated by independents and US President Trump's pledge to take over the semi-autonomous territory. The opposition party, which favours a gradual approach to independence from Denmark, achieved around 30% of the vote. Duterte at the ICC marks milestone for international justice. The former Philippines president's arrival at the International Criminal Court to face charges for crimes against humanity linked to his war on drugs signals a significant step in international law. Syria's temporary constitution for 5-year transition. It comes 3 months after interim President Ahmed al-Shaara's Islamist group led the rebel offensive that overthrew Bashar al-Assad. The document says Islam is the religion of the president, as the previous constitution did, and Islamic jurisprudence is the main source of legislation. Rather than a main source, enshrines separation of powers and judicial independence, and guarantees women's rights, freedom of expression, and media freedom. Portugal's government collapses again. The failure of the centre-right government, led by Prime Minister Luís Montenegro, amid allegations of a conflict of interest, marks the third government to fall in 3 years. Voters head back to the polls in May. Crackdown revokes 42,000 Kuwaitis of nationality. The enactment in December of a legislative amendment authorising forfeiture of citizenship for moral turpitude or dishonesty, or for actions aimed at threatening state security, including criticism of the emir or religious figures, has broadened the scope for the revocation of citizenship. Moving to the latest in conflict. US and Israel look to Africa for moving Palestinians from Gaza. The US and Israel have reached out to officials of 3 East African governments, including Somalia and Sudan, to discuss using their territories as potential destinations for moving Palestinians uprooted from the Gaza Strip under President Trump's proposed post-war plan. Angola to act as mediator in peace talks between Congo and M23 rebels. 23 is one of about 100 armed groups that have been vying for a foothold in mineral-rich eastern Congo near the border with Rwanda, in a conflict that has created one of the world's most significant humanitarian crises. More than 7 million people have been displaced. Lithuania backs plan to double EU military aid for Ukraine. Lithuania backed an EU proposal to pledge up to $43.5 billion in military aid for Ukraine this year, and said a similar amount would also be needed in future years to deter any future Russian attack. Large crowds flood Belgrade as months of protests reach boiling point. The anti-government protests began in November after a collapsed canopy of a railway station killed 14 people, and have now swelled into the largest protest movement in modern Serbian history. US says it will keep attacking Yemen's Houthis until shipping attacks end. In response, the Iran-aligned group signalled it could escalate in response to the US strikes. The airstrikes, which the Houthi-run health ministry said killed at least 53 people, are the biggest US military operation in the Middle East since President Trump took office in January. Turning to economics. Walmart friction with China after asking suppliers to absorb tariffs. The world's largest retailer is seeking to reduce the impact of President Trump's increased tariffs. Chinese officials met with Walmart executives to protest the retailer pressuring local suppliers to absorb tariff rises. Meanwhile, new data showed China's consumer prices fell to their lowest level in 13 months in February, underscoring the persistent deflationary pressures dragging on the economy. IMF approves $1.2 billion more for Egypt's economic recovery. The International Monetary Fund's disbursement comes as Egyptians face soaring inflation, including increases in fuel prices and subway fares, and a slide in the Egyptian pound against foreign currencies. WHO cost-cutting after US withdraws funding. The US was by far the World Health Organization's largest financial backer, contributing about 18%, or $1 billion, of the WHO's annual funding. Putin authorizes US hedge fund to buy foreign-owned Russian securities. Moscow has steadily tightened restrictions on foreign asset sales since the start of the conflict in Ukraine, with any transactions involving the energy and finance sectors requiring the president's approval. Investors are on the lookout for any signs that the thaw in US-Russia relations that could unlock ways for Western investors to trade Russian assets. Japan to invest in French EV resources project to ease China reliance. Japan will invest about $110 million in a French rare earth refining project, looking to reduce its dependence on China for industrial metals that are crucial to electric vehicles and other technologies. Now for the latest in development. Rwanda cuts ties with Belgium, orders diplomats to leave. Kigali's Foreign Affairs Ministry accused Belgium of interference before and during the ongoing conflict in the Democratic Republic of Congo, in which it said Belgium was acting against Rwanda. Annual jab for HIV protection passes trial hurdle. An annual injection designed to guard against human immunodeficiency virus, HIV, has completed an important early safety trial. Lenacapavir stops the virus from replicating inside cells. If future trials go well beyond the current successful Phase 1 testing, it could become the longest-acting form of HIV prevention available. Immigration accounts for US population growth for first time. The data finding comes amid falling American birth rates and ahead of plans for increased deportations. The Nonpartisan Migration Policy Institute looked at US Census Bureau data for 2022 to 2023, the latest available. Declining fertility rates are an issue for many countries around the world. DRC faces setback in fight against Mpox amid ongoing fighting in East. 6 weeks after Rwanda-backed rebels captured 2 major cities in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, the region is facing a setback in its fight against the Mpox outbreak. Multiple vessels report GPS disruption in Strait of Hormuz. The UK Navy has received multiple reports of GPS jamming in the Strait of Hormuz, a periodic hotspot for interference. Though not as frequent as it is in the Baltic, GPS disruption has occurred in the strait before. Finally, the latest stories in social. Pakistan says more than 300 hostages rescued from hijacked train. The Balochistan Liberation Army, BLA, claimed responsibility for the siege. The terrorist group has waged a decades-long insurgency to gain independence for Balochistan. Pakistan said all 33 attackers were killed. Man with heart failure, first to have total artificial heart implant. The device is the world's first implantable rotary blood pump that can act as a complete replacement for a human heart, using magnetic levitation technology to replicate the natural blood flow of a healthy heart. The man lived with the device for more than 100 days before receiving a donor heart transplant in early March. Fog harvesting. How to get water from the clouds. Wind pushes water vapor in the air through vertical nets, where it condenses into small droplets that trickle down the netting to be gathered in large containers. The nets collect around 35,000 litres of water every day, which covers the needs of more than 1,000 people and is also used to irrigate plants. Zambian river fears after acidic waste spill at mine. The acid spill at a Chinese-owned mine that contaminated a major river
could potentially affect millions of people after signs of pollution were detected at least 100 kilometers downstream. Zambian President Hichilema said it threatens people and wildlife along the Kafue, which runs for more than 1,500 kilometers through the heart of Zambia.
Future Trends is brought to you by the Institute for Economics and Peace.